Professor Bevins, thank you so much for joining me on the podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
I'm really excited to speak with you too, and thank you for making time. Before we jump in, would you like to introduce yourself and talk about your motivation for beginning this research?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a doctorate in cognitive neuroscience, a master's in child development, and ended up with a kiddo who was suicidal at 7. Cognitive neuroscience isn't just the brain, it's the hormones, it's our neurotransmitters. So having that background, it was like this perfect storm when we had a kiddo who was just struggling so badly to start digging into what was causing the struggle. And it would never have occurred to me ever in a million years that it was a chemical in his food, a petroleum-based chemical that the FDA says is safe. And for
Mhm.
some, it may be, but for a lot of people, it causes reactions, mild to severe. Our son is severely reactive. We've talked to doctors and researchers, and they all agreed that he's really on that severe end, which gave us the opportunity to see it. And a couple of years ago, I figured out that I was reacting on a milder level, but it was still a reaction that when I removed it, I had a little mini existential crisis. Oh my gosh, who am I? Because I feel different. And
Mhm.
so that really is what has been driving me all these years is
Mhm.
just to get the word out and educate people.
Do you want to take us back briefly to that moment when your son was in crisis, and what kind of symptoms was your son having at that time that led you to start to investigate?
So initially, we just assumed he was a really hyperactive kiddo, and I was a hyperactive kiddo. And so we thought, there we go. And then it got to where it was a little more than just that. And he was exhibiting a lot of ADHD type behaviors, but they
Mhm.
weren't consistent. Okay, so ADHD is daily, right? It's 24/7, but this was not 24/7. And so it was all right, what was going on with him? And I started to dig into the research when he told me that he couldn't concentrate to do his homework because his brain buzzed. And it's like, I know that brains aren't supposed to buzz. And so I started to dig. There's not a lot of research with humans and food dyes. There's some red 40, there's one with yellow 5 or yellow 6, and then there's not a lot. But I found a blog and I wish that I could find this woman. She's a woman now. She was 16 at the time because
Mhm.
she said when she ate red 40, her brain buzzed. And that was this connection to me. Like, all right, fine. So we pulled red 40. A lot of the ADHD behaviors disappeared, but the rest of them did not. We kept going with the other food dyes are fine and then they weren't, but we didn't know. And so we saw an increase in these behaviors of aggression and anxiety and high anxiety and racing thoughts and intrusive thoughts. And then the intrusive
Mhm.
thoughts got to be where he was just, he'd have a meltdown a month, a meltdown a week, a meltdown a day, 2 a day, 5 a
Mhm.
day. It was bad. And that's when he just begged me to get him a knife so he can kill himself. And no parent wants to be looking at their child who is 7
Mhm.
who wants to die. And it's
Mhm.
not that he wanted to die, it's that he just didn't want to feel like that anymore. He was just so overstimulated all the time and overwhelmed. We later found out that yellow stays in his system up to 5 days. And the
Mhm.
research demonstrates that it's detectable in urine for up to 5 days. So it was just a constant for him. It was an absolute constant. And so he just couldn't anymore. And I got that. And so we just started to dig a little bit further. And then I found a yellow article that linked it to more aggression. And I was like, you know what, forget it. Let's just pull all food dyes. And so we did. And
Mhm.
within 5 days, the suicide ideation disappeared, the behaviors disappeared.
And that's what I wanted to ask you about, was
Yeah.
that perhaps we could talk about it as a withdrawal.
Yeah.
Even in your own lived experience, you talk about it as like a withdrawal coming off of that. What does
Mhm.
that say to you?
What I noticed with him, yeah, it was a withdrawal. It was like a drug addict coming off of drugs. And
Mhm.
he crashed and he was sleeping. He was tired. He'd get up in the morning and he'd go like back down on the couch.
Mhm.
And physically, to touch him, it hurt him for about 3 days. He was
Mhm.
very tender, very sore, very touchy. And he just laid there and watched
Mhm.
TV. He couldn't even play video games. It's bad when they can't play video games. He started to come out of it on day 3, day 4.
Yeah.
but he was craving milk and cheese, which is very interesting. And I've talked to a
Mm-hmm.
couple other parents and they did the same. Their kiddo wanted yogurt and cheese. Could be the fats, could be the proteins, could be the combination of it could be going back to what we originally started drinking in the very
Mm-hmm.
beginning of our lives. It was a kind of interesting correlation.
Yeah.
And then he just started to feel a little bit better, but his
Mm-hmm.
stamina was down. And that's the interesting thing too, is
Mm-hmm.
it took months for his stamina to build back up. He'd go out and play with his friends and
Mm-hmm.
15 minutes later he's exhausted. So he didn't have that energy. And in talking to him, he's 20 now, and he said that when he eats yellow, I mean to this day he still reacts. Even
Mm-hmm.
though he's like almost 6'3" and 250, he's this big guy and
Mm-hmm.
he still reacts. And he said that the yellow causes the racing thoughts. He says he feels hot even though his temperature hasn't changed. You know, I asked him, I'm like, what kind of thoughts go through your head? He goes, every single thought you could possibly imagine has gone through my head. It's just it's nonstop flood. And his body, his metabolism, he used to be really skinny. And then he gained 6 pounds in 6 weeks after he quit the food dye. So it did have a metabolic effect on him. With working with Dr. Lauren Hofseth on the book, his area is pharmaceuticals, his area is research, his area is different from mine. But he said, yes, we've seen, and the research has shown that there are metabolic issues that it can cause.
There are so many questions that I want to ask you coming out
Okay.
of what you've shared. And if we go back to the TED Talk you did, which is
Mhm.
about 9-ish years ago, I believe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
there are almost 500,000 views. Why do you think so many people are interested in this topic? Is it because your story is very compelling? Your son's experience is very compelling? Is it that there's little information and you yourself have become an expert? Why are so many people interested in this issue?
I think it's a combination of all of that. The reason that I was asked to do the TED Talk is because I am in a unique position. I'm not
Mm.
just some crazy mom. I did some research with my kiddo. I did some double blind research with my kiddo. Having been in research for so long, I had the background and then I had the
Mhm.
PhD and the degrees to support it. So that was helpful. It is a compelling story. It is pretty intense. And I think that it resonates for some. I have talked to tens of thousands of people over the
Mm.
last 12 years. And I hear people say, oh my gosh, my son is similar, or my daughter did the same thing, or I had a student in class. We talk about it in class. He's a great example of an N of one study, a case study. And so we
Mhm.
talk about it in class. And he was talking in the beginning of the semester about how he has this rage inside of him and he wanted to talk to a therapist. I gave him some information. But then we talked about food dyes. He cut food dyes out. He came back to me 3 weeks later and was like, the rage is gone.
Yeah.
And so I think that it really does resonate with a lot of people
Mm.
of, oh, maybe our issues are related to this because
Yeah.
he exhibited ADHD behaviors. He exhibited depressive and anxiety behaviors, aggressive behaviors, oppositional defiant disorder, conduct disorder, intermittent explosive disorder, like all of these things he could have been labeled with. And I think that really touches people. It doesn't affect everyone, I get that. But the people that are experiencing issues should check your food. And I
Mhm.
think that's
Mhm.
where a lot of people, oh, maybe. One of the reasons it blew up, my TED Talk, was somebody took it and put it into 3 pieces and put it on TikTok. And that was about, I want to say almost 3 years ago. And I remember getting texts from my friends, oh my gosh, I saw you on TikTok. I'm like, I'm not on TikTok. And they're like, oh, but you are. And then my students are coming into class going, oh, I saw you on TikTok. It's okay. All right. And so I had to look into it and they had millions of views.
Mm.
And that's when a lot of things started to take off. And I think that the awareness is there now. I think we're far more aware now because it's being talked about from the government down. It's being talked about more and people want to know a little bit more. And so when you kind of Google food dyes,
Your name
might
comes
come
up.
up.
It certainly does. And
It
one of the
does.
really interesting things is that I think, certainly for me and for I think a lot of people who are listening, the symptoms, there's a lot of crossover in the symptoms. And a lot of people with multiple chemical sensitivity have the same experience of being misdiagnosed. And we're going to have another episode on misdiagnosis and medical dismissal. But of course, we can have anxiety. We can present to a
Mhm,
physician or healthcare worker with anxiety or even mania
mhm,
or rage, as you talked about, or depression. But it might be And oftentimes it could be the prescription medication that has maybe a synthetic dye or a chemical component, or the air fresheners that are being used in a certain space, or the laundry products that people were exposed to. So, do you, now that you've mentioned there's increasing awareness about synthetic food dyes, what do you think, Rebecca, about the level of awareness when it comes to other kinds of chemicals? And why don't we talk about fragrance? Because fragrance is a big one for us.
I've noticed, I'm in a Facebook group. I'm a moderator for a group that has nearly 1 million people in it. And yes, we focus on food dyes. However, the conversations will pop up of other things. There are a lot of people that are aware of other chemicals. There are food dyes in perfumes and lotions and candles and all over the place. And so that conversation is spread. But yeah, I think there's becoming a larger awareness of what are we consuming? What are we putting in our households? What are we using? We switched over to all natural cleaners in our
Mm-hmm.
house. I use a natural laundry detergent. That
Yeah,
word
that's
disappeared, right?
really a good, really important laundry products.
Yeah, and Costco sells it, and it's a powder, and it's all the things in there are
Sure.
easy to understand, and it's very limited in what's in it. And so we've really switched over a lot, and it maybe it's helped, maybe it
Hmm.
hasn't. Our foods, we still have a variety of foods in our house, a lot of organic because it's just easy to buy organic and know that there's no colors in it. But
Yeah.
there are different ways of consuming things into our body. It's not
Hmm.
just through our mouth. So, yeah, in our mouth, it goes into our guts and then it has
Hmm.
an effect on our gut system. Your skin can absorb chemicals as well. There's some
Hmm.
studies demonstrating that sunblock enters in, the active ingredients in sunblock will show up in your bloodstream within 24 hours after application. So, lotions end up in your system, soaps can end up in your system, nail polishes, makeup, all of these things can be absorbed by your skin. And we know that there's bacteria on our skin, and bacteria can break down certain chemicals and they can enter. So, like azo dyes, red and yellows, are broken down by skin bacteria, not just gut bacteria. So, it's important. It's called dermal absorption. Otherwise, patches of medication wouldn't work. So we know that you can put a patch of medication on and it will slowly absorb into your system. That includes anything else you put on your
Hmm.
system,
Yeah,
anything you put in your mouth, your toothpaste, your mouthwash, that can get absorbed underneath your tongue and into your system.
of course.
So we have to be aware of what's in and around our body. Breathing. That's why I got rid of all the chemicals.
That's
My
right.
son would be breathing because I don't know what's going to be affecting him or not
Well,
affecting him.
and to your point, if I could step
Yeah.
on your toes, how do we know as parents? I have young children, a lot of people have children, or even for themselves. How do, in your experience, how do we determine what is it? Is it a food dye or an aerosol or the laundry product? And I just want to share that I feel really, it's very moving to hear you with the level of awareness that you brought to your son. Because in my case, my parents missed it. If they'd been paying attention, it was more subtle perhaps than your son, but there were definite signs that they missed. And so if we're watching closely to our kids, what do, you had the research skills, right? Fortunately, there's more
Mhm.
information. What can we do to figure it out? What is the cause?
So first is you want to observe, right? You want to watch the kiddo, and if you notice a certain problematic behavior or a rash or a breathing difficulty, whatever it is, you want to write down daytime, what's happening. What did they eat in the last 24 hours? What did they do in the last 24 hours? Because
Mhm.
there are times where our son would be reacting after we removed it, and it's, wow, we're arguing over nothing. And it gets really combative when he's eating
Mhm.
yellow. Let me look back over the last 24 hours. And then I look back and, oh, there it is. Now I
Yeah,
found it.
and it'd be a delayed reaction.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened the last 24 hours? And you may not know, but you want to write down everything. And then the next time you observe it, you write it down again and what happened in the last 24 hours. And after a while, you'd be surprised. You'll notice a pattern. You'll start to see, every time he went to grandma's, every time he went to the
Hmm.
neighbor next door, every time he washed his hands with this, whatever, you'll start to see a pattern and you might be able to determine it. The other way is to eliminate everything from your house and your diet. So, like for food dyes, I'll tell people go through your house, mark every food with an X with a Sharpie. Don't touch it for 2 weeks. Eat everything that doesn't have food dyes in it. Get rid of the toothpaste and put the toothpaste, everything aside that has color in it, and watch, see how things change. I didn't catch myself. I knew for years about my son, never caught myself. I was put on a medication right around when we figured out that his problem was food dyes. I started presenting with parathyroid hypocalcemia, a rare metabolic disorder, usually because of surgery. I had no surgery. We had no idea why it happened. Basically, my body was storing all the calcium and I didn't have any floating around in my blood. And it was painful and it caused a lot of problems. It actually took 2 years and 4 doctors to figure it out. Talk about being misdiagnosed and dismissed, but that's another discussion.
Yeah.
The only thing I was consuming was a medication that I got on that medication,
Yeah.
and it had yellow and red in it, and there was no other option. That was the only thing I was consuming. And then 10 years later, I get it and it was naturally colored. And I noticed my anxiety and my thoughts and my mind start to calm down a little bit
Yeah.
for the first time.
It can be really hard to get. It's interesting to hear you
Yeah.
say that it's food dye in these medications. And we often have a struggle to get the version that doesn't have the.
Yeah.
What would you say to folks there's a fellow who posts on Facebook, he needs an antidepressant, but he cannot tolerate the dyes in this particular one, and he can't find a pure one. And my heart goes out to him. What do you say to folks who are in that predicament?
Go to a compound pharmacy. I hate to say it. I know it's expensive. I have a medication that I have to have compounded because once I removed food dyes from my system, I didn't even need the medication anymore. And it's very possible that the dyes were driving it. So go to a compound pharmacy. They are expensive, but they can put it together without any colors in it. I play this game every single time my son needs an antibiotic. It's 5 hours on the phone with doctors and pharmacies, and oh, they don't have that antibiotic. I call around all over the place trying to find one. I am really good at looking up now medications and finding a manufacturer that makes them dye-free.
There's the labor piece that we often have to do, and on busy schedules and busy lives, it becomes very difficult. I want to turn a page in a moment to ask you a little bit more about what is in these dyes and how they affect the body beyond chemical reactions. But first, you mentioned the medical misdiagnosis piece. I wanted to talk with you about that because a lot of people face that with MCS. And we know it could be the aerosols, the laundry products, all those chemicals could be causing it. But we're often told we may have anxiety disorder, depression.
And I have a neurological pain disorder, and they couldn't figure it out. And it was a process of elimination. And it took me finding an endocrinologist who was willing to think outside the box. So when you're putting something on your skin and it's getting into your bloodstream, what is it doing in your system? The way to test for any of these is complete process of elimination and then reintroduction. And it's so hard because we have so many chemicals in our system here. So are you ready to isolate yourself for a couple weeks and kind of test it out? Because it can take a couple weeks for you to start to see a difference, but your body does flush things out relatively quickly, and you can eliminate and then reintroduce.
I think with MCS, we're probably not consuming food dyes in our food. We're pretty well versed in that. We stay away from those because we know those are going to be a problem for us. But you did mention that they're petroleum based, and that's the interesting crossover too, that a lot of the chemicals in household and personal care products are petroleum based. So you're telling me that food dyes are also petroleum based.
Yeah, they originally made from coal tar, and now they're made from petroleum. So you've got to look at your toothpaste and see what's in your toothpaste, unless you're brushing with straight baking soda, which you might choose to do for a little bit. But trying that for a couple of weeks to get away from some of the chemicals that might be in the toothpaste.
You mentioned toothpaste. When we go to the dentist, it's in the fluoride treatment. So I have to say no to those. So it's really everywhere. And sometimes we need to take a blanket approach and just say, no, we're going to make our own food. We're going to stay away from those. Another parallel between food dyes and for folks with MCS is that, as you write, very small amounts of food dyes
Mm,
can cause a trigger. There isn't a large amount in a capsule of a medicine, I
mm-mm.
imagine, but it can still create a very strong reaction.
Yeah. Yes, just a little bit. And you're going to get a carryover effect on some of the like the red and yellow. Carryover red can last in your system for 48 hours. So if you eat it one day and then you eat it the next day, so the second day is now a higher dose than the first day, and then you eat it again, now you're just continuing it. There's no break. And so it can be so little that could cause an effect that you're not aware of. And you can think that anxiety is normal. I always thought my level of
Mhm.
anxiety was normal, right?
Mhm.
Till it wasn't. When you do find that chemical that is affecting you, and it could be several, it could be a
Yeah.
couple different chemicals, but when you find it, it's, oh, wow,
It's like
okay.
having your life back. And one of the great things that I'm take away from our conversation is that we have a certain level of control. There's a lot of work to
Hmm.
do, a lot of research to be done, but we can make choices. What's challenging with fragrances in the air is that we have a lot less control. I can't control what my neighbor uses in their and that comes through their dryer vents and goes through my window and makes me ill. I can't control necessarily what floor cleaners used at my children's school. For example, what do you make of that? That we're in jeopardy wherever we
Yeah.
go. It becomes very perilous.
Yeah, no, yes, it is very difficult when you can't control other people. And like you said, you don't know what the cleaners are. You don't know when the kids go and touch the desks at school, what was on those desks. The dentist, our pediatric dentist actually shifted all of his fluoride treatments to dye-free foam because of
It's great.
Alex. Yeah, it was good. And that's where talking to people and being that advocate can start to help make changes on a small level, but
But
that small level starts to grow
yeah,
eventually.
it does, but it often feels like a me problem. For example, I
Oh,
talk
yeah.
about our judo club. We spend a lot of time doing judo as a family, and I'm the only one who's asking for fragrance free. And I feel like an outcast, and it's very, very challenging.
It is isolating from the ER when my son had to go to the ER to restaurants to wherever his school when he was at school or his dentist or we do get treated like we're those crazy people that are just think they're special. And I've had people say, well,
Yeah.
just avoid it. I'm like, that's cute. Right. That's just adorable. It's
Yeah.
not that easy as just avoiding it. And so, yeah, we feel that and it's isolating. The disappointment that we feel regularly because we can't do what other people are doing. We can't have what other people have. It's isolating and it's this podcast provides that support for so many and that connection in such a
Thank
way
you.
that's just wonderful.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, Rebecca.
You're welcome. Thank you so much for having me.